data points, which are the 24 months of 2019 and 20. And it is automatically identifying the seasoning, as in which months typically have low cost and which months typically have higher cost. And it is using all of that data and trends to plot the forecast for next 12 months of 2021. We can find out some technicalities behind this forecasting by going back and then clicking on this visualization and choosing the option to show data. Here we see a tab called Forecasting Statistical Details. When you click on it, it provides you the technical information that Cognos has used behind the scene to run the statistical algorithm. Here we can see that Cognos has automatically identified a seasonality in the data, and then it has provided certain accuracy for the prediction and so on. So those who understand statistics can refer to these to understand how Cognos has arrived to those forecasted numbers. There could be cases when Cognos cannot forecast data because there are less data points. Let's minimize and have a look at it. So if I try the column chart this time, and we will drag total earnings in the length of the columns, and again we will drag date in the bars. So it is projecting the total earnings over 2019 and 20 months, and we will open the forecasting option, switch on forecasting. So currently Cognos is able to forecast the earnings for the months of 2021. However, if I apply filter on the dates to limit it only to the year-to-date months, so if I drag this year-to-date filter and put in the local filter, my bars are now going to be limited only to January to April. And because 4 data points are not enough for forecasting, I get a warning. And when I click on it, it says forecasting is not successful because there is insufficient data. If I remove this filter, I'm now fetching data for 2 years. And based on that data, Cognos is able to forecast certain months of 2021. We can minimize and then stretch it to the page width. And we can give titles to these visualizations: cost trend with forecast and earnings trend with forecast. This way, we have seen that Cognos has made statistics and forecasting so much accessible even to the end users who do not understand how to create statistical programs, because Cognos does that hard work behind the scene. Let's rename this tab as Trends and Forecasts and save this report. In the next video, we will talk about data security. So click on Functions and open Macro Functions and scroll down to drag the CSV Identity Name List function. This function returns the pieces of users' information. This information includes the account name, group name, etc. So this function is going to return the current user's name as one of data security. In our dashboard, we have created a tab which provides employees' information. This tab is called Contributors. If we are going to release this dashboard to the wider audience, we would want to make sure that the employees can only see their own data and not the data for the other employees. With that use case, we will learn about creating one way of applying data security in this data module as well as in the dashboard. Please note that Cognos provides many ways of applying data security. So what we are covering here is only one method. For our method, we are going to open the data module. The employee names are available in this table called employee list. So here we are going to create 2 calculations. So click on the context icon and click on new calculation. The first calculation that we are going to create here is going to use a macro function. So click on Functions and open Macro Functions and scroll down to drag the CSV Identity Name List function. This function returns the pieces of users' information. This information includes the account name, group name, etc. So this function is going to return the current user's name as one of the parameters. Because it's a macro function, we need to put it between hashes. So put a hash in the beginning and a hash at the end. And also this function returns comma separated values. So we want to convert them into one large string. So we will use a function called sq, which is going to put the whole output into one single quote so that Cognos will treat this output as one string. Let's preview the output by clicking on the preview button. So we can see my username and then few other information about the user groups and roles that I belong to. When we save this calculation and it is used by some other user, the same expression is going to return a different value, and that value would represent that user's name and the roles and the groups. So we are going to call this calculation as current username and then click on OK. So we can see in the grid tab that all of these rows are for various employees, giving their IDs and names. But now we also have this additional column, which is representing the current user who is running this report or logged on to this Cognos session, and that user's name and its roles and groups. The next thing we will do is create one more calculation that will check whether this employee name is present in this string. So we will create one more calculation, and here we will use a function called position. Position returns an integer value which represents whether string 1 is present in string 2. And if string 1 is not present in string 2, then it will return a 0. So we'll drag position function. We want to search for the employee name. So we will drag the person name data item as the first argument. And we want to search it in the current username data item. Click on preview. So we can see that this person name is not present in the current username. So the output is 0. We will click on OK. And now examine in the whole table content. So I'm going to sort person name ascending, and we'll scroll down. And here I can see my name. And this name is present in the string called current username. So the output is a non-zero value. Let's rename this calculation and call it is current user. So we know that this is a data item which will only return a non-zero value for that employee ID where the name is same as the account name of the person logged into the Cognos session. Let's save this module. And now we go to the dashboard again. For the changes to reflect, we'll have to relink the data module. So we go back up, click on relink, and choose section 6 achievements, branch costs and performance module, which we just updated. Let's see if the new calculations are now visible. So here we can see is current user and current user name are now visible. So we will go to the contributors tab, and here we would expand the visualization, which is showing the employees, and add a local filter for is current user. Click on add filter condition, and here instead of contains, we would put does not contain 0. Click on apply, close, and click on OK. We will minimize this, and I'm going to remove the filter for branch name because I don't have any data in this SX branch. Let's remove that and click on OK. And this should return data for only one user. And when we click on it, we can see the current user's performance for various products. So this way, we have created a calculation which will return a non-zero value only for that data where employee name matches with the current username. So the same dashboard, when used by another user, will be returning data for that user rather than for my user. So it will work dynamically and provide the data security. Next video is the last video of our current section. In that, we will look at range joins and join filters. Range joins and join filters. In this video, we are going to learn about an advanced technique related to the relationships in the data module. So please make sure that your dashboard is saved by clicking on the Save button, and then switch to the data module. And now open the Relationships tab. Double-click on the relationship between CA performance data and months. We have seen this screen before when we learned about creating the relationship earlier in this course. In this case, we have defined the relationship based on the month key and month columns. So if we refresh the table, we can see that Cognos brought data from both the sides and joined them where the values in these columns were exactly the same. Now, there may be some scenarios where you do not expect the values to exactly match. For example, if you had some data which is having a date range, so it has got two columns called from date and to date, and you want the joins to happen when month key is between those two columns. In that case, you can change the operator by clicking on the matched columns hyperlink here, and instead of it being n equal to, you can change it to be greater than equal to or less than n equal to. So in this case, let's change it to greater than or equal to. And now we will select month key and branch just for an example. Click on match selected columns. And now we can see number 2 appearing for the matched columns. And here we see that there are two matches, and the other one we can change to less than or equal to. Imagine that if we had two columns as from and to, we could have defined it as month key greater than or equal to from and month key less than or equal to day. This way you can define join between two tables on a condition where the column values are not exactly matching, but rather they are in a range of values. Another advanced mechanism with regards to relationships is called the join optimization. And we can see those options by clicking on this option here on left hand side. Currently, we have chosen no filtering, but if you are sourcing data from two totally different systems, say your one data is coming from a file, whereas another data is coming from an Oracle table, you can optimize the performance by selecting one of the following values. The first option, unique values, is applicable when the cardinality is 1-to-1. And in that case, Cognos will first go to the smaller table. Let's assume that the file is smaller. Then it will go to the smaller file and it will find out all the unique values from the join key. And then it will look for them in the larger table with an in filter. So from the larger table, it will only retrieve those rows where the key column values are in the unique values returned from the smaller table. A similar option is called unique values in subquery, which is applicable in one-to-many. Again, it will only fetch the required data from the larger table, but this time it will apply filtering using a subquery. Range of values is applicable when the join operator is not equal to, rather the join operator is greater than or less than, like how we have just defined. In that case, Cognos will find out the unique values from the smaller table, and then it will apply the greater than and less than on the larger table. So this way, optimization is an important option when we are sourcing data from different systems or large tables, and we can improve the performance by changing the way Cognos will apply filtering to implement the joins. For this course, we are using files. So we are going to set this back to no filtering, and we also don't want to make any change here. So we are just going to close this without making any change. But the whole purpose of this video was to explain that there are sophisticated options available while creating relationships in the data module. So let's cancel. Let's quickly recap what we learned in this section. In the first video of this section, we learned about creating data groups in the waterfall chart. And then we learned about adding relative dates filter and relative dates virtual measures in the data module. We learned about using the map visualization. And we also learned how to enable predictive forecasting in the line and column charts. Finally, we learned one technique of applying data security on the contributors tab, and we touched upon the range joins and join filters that we can use in the relationships. I'm looking forward to seeing you in the next and final section of this video course called Create Story and Give Finishing Touch. Section 7. Create Story and Give Finishing Touch. We have now created a multi-tabbed dashboard. In this section, we will look at a new type of end product called story. We will create a slideshow-like story and give it finishing touches to make it neat and ready for presentation. Introduction to story. When we try to save this dashboard, we also get one more option here in the save dropdown called Save as Story. This is the quickest way to convert our dashboard into a story. However, in this video, we will learn to create a story from scratch, and we will familiarize with the story editor. Let's begin creating a new story by clicking on the plus icon at the left bottom corner and then choose the story option. Cognos is now asking us whether we would like to start a story in a slideshow format or in a guided journey format. Before selecting one of these options, let's understand what is a story. Story is a unique offering from Cognos, and it is not easy to find similar product in any other reporting and dashboard tools. It is an interactive and online replacement to the PowerPoint slides. It allows us to build the slides with animations and transitions and add dynamic contents to them. By dynamic content, we mean those figures and visualizations which automatically update when the data in the sources change or whenever any new data gets loaded. We can also change the filters in the story to change the context. For example, we can apply the filters on regions and branches so that it is specific to the audience for the presentation. In the old days, we used to create many copies of the PowerPoint presentations and then put the contents for each region or branch into those PowerPoint slides. So every time you visit a new region or a branch, you had to update the corresponding PowerPoint slide. Whereas by using Cognos Stories, all of these can happen on the fly simply by changing the filters, and the contents are automatically updated. Out of the two options that we see here, the first option called slideshow is the classic transition style, where we can create a series of slides or scenes, and the presentation will move from one slide to the other slide. The second option called guided journey is a transition style where the audience are guided. It starts with a full picture of the story, and then each part of the story pans and zooms into the details across the canvas. For the purpose of this course, I'm going to use the classic slideshow and then click on Create. Now we are presented with the story editor. This story editor is very similar to the dashboard editor. So we get same panels like the data source panel, the widget panel, visualizations panel, and so on. We also get the similar options on the top right. For example, this icon will open the properties of the story and properties of any object that we select on the canvas. And this icon is going to allow us to preview in the full screen, and we can hit escape to come back. However, in the story editor, we cannot create multiple tabs. Instead, we create the scenes by using the scene selector at the bottom. If you are not seeing the scene selector, it may be minimized, which looks like this. So you can click on the scene selector icon from the bottom to open it. Each scene is like a slide in the presentation. We can add a new scene by clicking on the plus icon. The scene is going to use the default template. If you would like to select a particular template, then you can click on the small drop-down icon and then choose one of the templates for adding a new scene, like this. In order to add the contents on the scene, we can minimize the scene selector and now open the data sources panel and add any data module as a data source. So please click on My Contents, go to Section 6 Achievements, and choose the Branch Costs and Performance module. So we see the same module which we used for the dashboard now available in the story, and here we can drag any content on the canvas of the scene. So let's open CA performance data table and drag invested assets. And we can see that Cognos has now used the summary widget to project the invested assets. Let's resize this widget and also add fees and commission. We can double click on the text item. So let's type 2019 annual performance. Once we have added some objects on the scene, we can again expand the scene selector. Let's minimize the data sources panel so we have more real estate to work with. And now we will look at something called timeline. We can control in what order and when the objects will appear on the scene by expanding the timeline. For that, please click on this open timeline icon. And now we can see that there are 5 objects on this scene and they will all appear at the same time and they are all going to be visible for 5 seconds. We can change this by simply dragging the objects on the timeline. So I've dragged them in such a way that we will first see the text called 2019 annual performance. Then after 1 second, a text placeholder will appear, which we have not actually used so far on the left hand side. Then we will have invested assets summary value appearing. Let's move it to 1 second as well. After 1 more second, we would have the fee summary value. And then a 3rd second, we would have the commission summary value appearing. Currently, we can see that on the scene selector, we are only seeing the text 2019 annual performance, but we are not seeing those other controls. That is because Cognos is right now showing us how the scene or the slide will look at the 0 second. This blue handle is called the timeline scrubber, and we can click on it, hold the mouse button down and drag it over the timeline to see how the objects will appear at different times on the slide. We can also zoom in and zoom out into the timeline using these magnifier icons. If you have zoomed in a bit too much, you can click on zoom to fit. Zoom to fit will make sure that everything right from the beginning of the first object to the end of the last object will be shown on the timeline. We can preview it by clicking on this play button. So let's minimize the scene selector and click on the play button to play the scene. I would like to make sure that all of the contents always fit the screen. So let's open the properties, expand the canvas section, and then enable fit to page. Let's play one more time. And in order to make sure that these numbers are filtered for 2019, let's open the data source, open months table and drag the year into the filter and select 2019. Whenever the data would change at the background, these numbers will automatically update. So this is presentation wherein the contents will update automatically. And you can also easily change the year, or you can add more filters for regions or branches or any specific product. Let's also quickly look at the playback options. If you click on the playback options icon, you get 4 options. The first one, called navigate markers, is going to show us some markers on the timeline. And these are the markers when various objects are appearing. This can be useful if you wanted to jump back to a specific part of the timeline. The second option, called play all scenes, if you enable it, then the presentation will keep going from first scene to the second scene and so on without the presenter having to click on the next scene button. Loop will make sure that as soon as the end of the last scene is reached, it will automatically come back to the first scene and loop again. This is typically useful when the presentation is put on a kiosk for displaying certain information or presentation over and over for a long period of time. And refresh at start will make sure that every time the presentation starts again, the data will be refreshed. So if the data is changing at the back end, for example, market share prices, then those changes will reflect each time the presentation loops. In our next video, we will learn about reusing the contents using pins. Reuse contents using pins. First of all, let's make sure that we are saving the story. So click on the save button, go to my contents, create a new folder by clicking on this plus icon and call it section 7 achievements. Now open that folder and save the story as branch review presentation. Typically, a story starts with introduction and it would have a couple of slides with the main data contents and it would end with a conclusion. For the main data contents, we will reuse some of the visualizations from the dashboard which we created so far in the course. So let's go back to the dashboard and learn about a new concept called pins. We would like to reuse the map from market penetration tab, and now select the map visualization and click on the pin icon. Now go to the contributors tab and select waterfall visualization, which shows us the product's contribution to the earnings, and click on the pin icon. And finally, go to the trends and forecast, and we would like to reuse the cost trend from here. So click on the pin icon for that visualization. Now let's switch back to our story called branch review presentation. We will go back to the scene selector by minimizing our timeline. We can do that by clicking on this close icon. And let's add one more scene. Open the templates and we will use this scene which has got title with one visualization. And here we will call it product's contribution to earnings. Those visualizations which we pinned earlier would all be available here in the pins panel. So click on the pins icon from the left hand side. And here we can see those visualizations which we pinned in the dashboard. So we can now reuse those visualizations. Here for product contribution, we are going to reuse the waterfall. We can also see a small preview of the visualization. and we can drag it and drop onto the scene canvas. And now view it in the full screen mode. So what we have just achieved is going to a dashboard, identifying a visualization that we would like to reuse in the story. We pinned it. And now when we go in the story editor, we were able to see all those visualizations which we pinned. And then we simply dragged one of those visualizations and we were able to straight away use it without having to recreate it from scratch. We will double check the filter condition here. We can see that there is already a filter for the year of 2019. Click on escape to minimize. We will repeat this process with one more scene, create a new scene of similar template and call it cost trends and forecast. Again, open the pins panel and this time we will drag the cost trend on the scene. Let's resize it and we can view it in full screen. Here we are showing 2 years of trend, so we don't have any filter for the year. We are showing the 2019 and 20 trend, and we are also showing the forecast for 2021. Now let's use the region map on the second slide where we already added the annual figures and some timeline before. Again, we open the pins panel, drag region map. We are going to use this map as a background, so we size it so that it covers the whole screen, and now we select it and send it to back by clicking on the send to back button. Let's see it in the full screen mode. So this way we have learned how to reuse contents from other dashboards into our story using pins. In our next video, we will look at the themes, animation, and infographics. Theme, animation, and infographics. So far, we have created 3 scenes in our story. The first scene is introduction, and it is going to show us the 2019 key performance indicators, which are invested assets, fees, and commissions. And it is going to show the region map in the background. The next scene is showing us a product's contribution, and the third scene is going to show us the cost trend and forecast. In this video, we will learn about some cosmetic and presentation features. We'll start with theme. Cognos provides an out-of-box feature to change the theme of the story, which can be accessed by opening the properties from the top right-hand corner. Open the color and theme option, and now change the visual theme. There are 3 themes available, which are default, light, and dark. As the dark theme gives a very dramatic effect, I would like you to try with this. And notice that as soon as we choose the theme, it turns the background to black. And then most of the visualizations also have the black background. Now, if we go to this, we notice that the map has not yet changed to the black background. So certain visualizations may not automatically change and we have to manually make changes to them. Let's do that. Click on the map visualization, bring it to front. Now in the visualization properties, expand the chart option and change the style to default dark. And this has changed the map background also to black, and it matches with the dark theme. Let's also turn off the legend by switching off the option of show legend, and we can also switch off few more options. So we can switch off the layer control, and let us also switch off the search control. Close the properties panel and minimize scene selector. Move this map in the background again and play the scene. Now notice our summary visualizations now have the black background, but we would like to make them transparent so we can see the map. So let's click on invested asset, make it bigger, and open its properties. Go to General tab, expand appearance, and change its fill color to select no color. We can see that invested asset is now large and the background is transparent. We will do the same for fees. We have repeated the process. Let's hide properties. Because it is still a little bit difficult to read these numbers, I'm going to change font colors to be white. So we change the element color to white for all 3 visualizations. We can also repeat the process for the title. So we'll make the title bigger and we'll change its font color to white. We can also select the map, open its properties, go to General, open appearance, and change its opacity to be 50% transparent. That will make it less overpowering. And let's view it in full screen mode. We still see the borders around these visualizations. So let's make them transparent as well. I'm going to multi-select these visualizations, open the properties, go to General, appearance, and change the border to be transparent. So this is a very impactful opening of the presentation, showing the 3 key performance indicator values for the year of 2019. Let's move to the next scene. Here we can see that the dark theme has properly been applied. And in the next scene as well, we can see that the cost trend is properly being shown with the dark theme. Now we will take a look at infographics. So please click on escape to go back to the editor and create a new scene by clicking on the plus icon here and minimize the scene selector. Cognos provides 2 ways to use the infographics. First is simply the collection of shapes and icons, which we can use on our dashboards as well as stories. Secondly, we can merge it with the summary icon to represent the numerical information. So let's go to data sources and open the branch cost data and drag infrastructure costs. So this has created a summary widget showing the infrastructure cost, but rather than showing it as number, we can also use one of the shapes, for example, the currency node, and drag it over the summary widget and we can see that the number is now converted to an infographic, showing the same numerical figure using a set of icons. This can be a powerful feature to compare to different products. For example, if I duplicate it, and now we can set a local filter, so expand region, and we drag England, whereas for the lower one, and use Scotland in the local filter, and view it in full screen. So we can see that the same numerical data is now presented using the set of icons, and you can see that England is more expensive or needs more money to run the infrastructure. The other way would be to simply use the icons. For example, on our contributions page, we can drag one of these icons and also add a text. Mortgage products are the best earners. This way we can use the set of icons on our scenes as well. Finally, I would like to highlight one important feature in the animation. So if we expand the timeline for the scene, here we would like to highlight product mortgage at certain point. So on the timeline, we will locate the earnings contribution by products chart. And after 4th second, I would like to add a highlight. And here we will choose a product group as mortgage products. So essentially, Cognos will highlight mortgage products on the 4th second when it reaches here. And at that point, we would like this idea to appear. Let's see this in action in full screen. So we can see that mortgage products is now highlighted and the text appears at 4th second. This way, we have learned how to use the theme, animation, and infographics to enrich our story or presentation. In our next video, we will give finishing touches to our story, and then we will look at how to share it using custom URL. Sharing story and dashboard using custom URL. In this video, we will give some finishing touches to our story, and then we will learn about how to share our dashboards and stories. Let's open the scene selector and go to the first scene. This is a title slide. Because we are using our second scene as the title slide, we do not require it. So let's click on these 3 dots and then delete the scene. On the second scene, we have already changed the fonts, backgrounds, etc. and we have defined the timeline. On this scene, we do not need the title for the chart because we already have title for the scene. So let's click on the chart, open the property, expand the legend options, and turn off legends. Go to general and also turn off the show title option from appearance. So this gives more real estate for our chart. Let's play the animation and make sure that the mortgage product highlight is working fine. We can change the color of this text by selecting the text and change it to green so it matches with the rest of the theme. Now we go to the next scene. Here we notice that the dates on the x-axis are not looking tidy. For that, open the properties of this visualization, open the axis section, and now scroll down to the value axis label. And here, switch off the option of show values axis ticks. And we can see that the axis labels are now looking much better. We can hide the chart title here by going to general, appearance, and switching off the title option. Finally, this 4th scene, which we used to experiment with infographics, we can delete those infographics, expand the text, the conclusion. So we can put some actions here. The first action is improvements are needed for personal loan products. And the second action is flatten out 2021 costs by reducing the June 21 cost. We can increase the font and we are done. So let's save our story. In order to share the story or to share our dashboard, we can click on this share icon, and that gives us several ways to share the dashboard as well as story. The first option we have is to click on the email icon. We can specify multiple email addresses in the to section and in the CC section. We can specify the subject, a message, the image of the dashboard or story would appear here. The second option is to share the direct link. The URL link is something that we can give to those recipients who have the ability to log on to the Cognos portal and have access to our dashboard or story. So by giving them the link, they will be able to directly access the dashboard or the story. Whereas the iframe snippet is something that can be embedded into SharePoint or any other web portal to show the contents of this dashboard or story embedded into another web page or web application. Finally, we also have an option to export the dashboard or story into PDF by clicking on this export to PDF button. I would like to add one more piece of information here. When you take the link and when you share the link with someone, it would typically open with all of these icons on the top and the icons on the left hand side. So if you would like the dashboard or story to open directly in the full screen mode without those icons on the top and left hand side, then in that case, you can add some parameters at the end of the URL. Let's have a look at them. The first parameter that you can add at the end of the URL is called UI_app_bar, and you can pass the value as true or false. It specifies whether the top application bar should be shown or not. By default, the value is true. then means in the URL, if this parameter is not present, then the application bar will be shown. However, if you put UI_app bar equals false in the URL, then the top application bar will not be shown. Likewise, there is another option called UI_nav bar, which is the navigation bar. Again, the default value is true, but you can add this parameter to switch off the navigation bar from the left-hand side. In the next video, we will review the topics covered in this course. Course review. We have come a long way in this course and we have learned how to use Cognos Analytics in cloud. Let's quickly recap the topics that we covered in this video course. We started our course with the introduction to business analytics, and we looked at the high-level architecture of Cognos. And we also learned how to create a free account for using Cognos Analytics in cloud. Then we looked at Welcome Portal. We familiarized with this new interface, and we also compared the old Cognos Business Intelligence terminologies with the new terminologies. After becoming familiar with Welcome Portal, we learned how to connect to various data sources in the organization, as well as uploading our own data using CSV files. We created data module using the data which we uploaded, and we also learned the data modeling concepts like dimensions, measures, joins, and cardinalities. Once our data module was ready, we started building the dashboard. During dashboard creation, we learned about various visualizations like summary widget, crosstabs, and bar and line charts. And we also covered the advanced techniques like enabling predictive forecasting, using map visualizations, applying data security, and many more. Finally, we learned how to create a story from scratch or convert a dashboard into story. We learned how to use pins to reuse the objects. And then we looked at how to share our dashboards and stories with the other users in various formats. Your Cognos Analytics journey does not stop here. There are various resources available for you to continue this journey. I would recommend using IBM's own user guides, as well as subscribing to my course called Going Beyond Dashboards with IBM Cognos Analytics. I really hope that you enjoyed this course and wishing you all the best. Thank you.